I want to thank you for coming to Sacramento for this important event. I'm really impressed that you took the time to come out to share your story to the State Board of Education, so I appreciate that. I introduced a bill, SB 1362, that I want everybody to pay attention to and consider it in terms of fairness, transparency, and the ability to let people participate, empower people in the community to make decisions on what's happening with education in our community in a fair way. I think it's very important to have facts and avoid the shouting matches. So I feel the whole appeals process at this time is a kind of an unfair process that doesn't work. The state board members make decisions and act like they know more than the local decision makers. Now, if anybody can convince them, it's you, the parents, to tell them what you think and what your opinion is. And I know it's important to have you tell the stories to the State Board of Education. And these form the families, teachers, and administrators. These stories have been influencing me in terms of creating the bill that I have offered, SB 1362. Now, I understand the importance of meeting the different learning needs of students, but I have reservations on what is happening in California, especially in regards to the process for review and approval of charter schools. It seems to me that it's changing into one that prioritizes the growth opportunities for charter school operators over the educational needs of parents and students. And this concern has been heard by many of you. I'd like to point out also that as a step-parent of two children that have graduated successfully and happily through the Eastside Union High School District, as a parent alumni, I call myself, I guess. One from James Lick and one from Silver Creek High School. I appreciate the public education that my family received and the children, especially, I'll say this, especially my stepson Greg, who was a special ed student at James Lick High School. And he still loves the high school, goes to see the AFLEC events. I won't comment on the one-loss record, though. I think most of you know what it is. But they're cheering right to the end. When a school district faces declining enrollment, like we've been facing, it goes beyond reason that they would consider opening up a new school. We're declining enrollment, and opening a new school is counter to that intuitively, We want to fix that with SB 362 by having the local school district look at those kinds of factors, for example. I think that's important. That's why we did the bill, and I'm concerned about I'm the champion of special education in the state Senate. Okay, I'll just say it flatly. I'm the champion of getting funds for people that need extra help, developmentally disabled, and foster care. I just achieved a victory in the Senate Education Committee on my bill that would increase college grants and scholarships to foster youth in the CSU, community colleges, and University of California, so that they would have more opportunities to complete and achieve their degrees. Right now, only 4% of them actually finish college. So I think part of it is that having everybody have an opportunity is our goal in education. We have disparities between people in terms of where they live, what school district live, but especially racial disparities. And we have to recognize that in education. We have to recognize that because the Constitution says, an equal, free, for all equal education opportunity. That's what we're for. We want everybody to have an equal opportunity. And if we don't, if we do things that inhibit that, that violates the principles of the Constitution of the United States and the state of California. Equal opportunity is what we stand for. That's the bottom line. And it's the bottom line with me, having seen many students that struggle through life and their families, and they ought to have an equal opportunity as somebody that happens to be the child of a billionaire or anybody else. I don't really care. I want everybody to have the equal opportunity. So I think in the context of that, I think we have to look at the issue of charter schools and make sure that when the process of approval of charter schools leads us to that goal that we have for equal opportunity and increased opportunity for education. I think this debate with charter schools has inhibited and has stifled what should be the real debate, which is increased funding for education. We can't be fighting among ourselves. We can't be fighting among ourselves and pointing fingers when what we should be fighting for is more money in the budget for education. I sit in this room weekly as a member of the Budget Subcommittee on Public Safety and hearing the state prison budget. And we're now at the it's going to be soon next year, $90,000 per inmate per year in the state prison system. Can you imagine if we had that money instead spent on more funds for education opportunities for our young people so they don't have the prison pipeline? So let's get our facts straight. Let's get our goals straight for our state of California. So thank you for coming here. I met a teacher Saturday, somebody struggling to teach in the class day to day. And the teacher explained to me how hard they worked, how hard it is with the fact that California is like 46th or so in terms of compared to 50 states in sort of the per student funding for education, how hard it is for them to maintain the classroom that they have with the large number of students. The students have varying needs and experiences that need help, and how it's hard to do that and then have the notice come that one of your schools in your district or two or more are going to be closed, and that there would be even more students in the classroom and then less services and programs for the students that are in the public school system. So for me, this is a stand for the Constitution of California and the United States to have equal education opportunity. And we should all stand for that, and we should not argue about that. That should not be an argument. You're all for it, and we all know you're all for it. So let's get the money and make it happen. Equal opportunity for education. Let's have fair evaluations of the charter schools. When we go through that process, we should not have shouting matches or just emotions. We should look at it from a rational, reasonable standpoint in terms of what we're trying to do to provide that education. So thank you very much. I'll open up the hearing.
Thank you, Senator Beall, for the opportunity to discuss fairness, transparency, and accountability for California students, families, educators, and taxpayers. I'm Julian VASQUEZ-HEILIG, Professor of Educational Policy and Leadership at California State, Sacramento. I also serve as the Education Chair for the California NAACP. In the fall of 2016, the NAACP National Board of Directors approved a national resolution calling for the moratorium on charter schools until more transparency and accountability in their operations can be achieved. Following this action, the NAACP created a task force on high-quality education to understand the impact of charter schools and traditional public schools on students of color in the inner city. The task force conducted a listening tour across the United States in cities most impacted by private control and privatization, including Detroit, New Orleans, and Los Angeles. The task force mission was to make recommendations to the NAACP's Board of Directors on policy and actions needed to improve the quality of education for students of color being educated with public funds and to ensure the sustainability of an effective public education system for every single student. The NAACP's High Quality Education Task Force report made the following 4 recommendations. First, school finance reform is needed. To solve the quality education problems that are at the root of many issues, school finance inequity still persists, and it's essential to ensure that resources are allocated according to student needs. As Senator Beall stated, this is one of the real fights, fully funding education. In fact, inequity still persists in California despite the positive direction charted by the LCAP and the LCFF. For example, while Los Angeles has experienced a 17% increase in funding and Oakland a 12% increase in funding pre- and post-LCFF, a wealthy district like Beverly Hills has seen a 25% increase, Palo Alto a 24% increase. The second recommendation, invest in low-performing schools and schools with significant opportunity gaps. To ensure that all students receive a high-quality education, federal and state policies need to do the following: attract and retain fully qualified educators, improve educational quality, and provide wraparound services for young people. Community schools are one such model by which we can do this. Third, mandate a rigorous authoring and renewal process for charters. Only local districts should serve as authorizers. Empower those districts to reject applicants that do not meet standards and establish policies for serious and consistent oversight. The task force report states, states with the fewest authorizers have been found to have the strongest charter school outcomes. To do this, states should allow districts to serve as authorizers and should empower them to reject applications that do not meet certain standards. In fact, at about 40%, the California Board of Education has the highest charter failure rate of any level of authorizer in California since 2001. This is about 15% higher than county authorized charters and 10% higher than unified district authorized charters. And we can make that data available to you if you're interested. Eliminate for-profit charter schools. This is still a challenge in California. They still exist here. No federal, state, or local taxpayer dollars should be used to fund for-profit charter schools, nor should public funding be sent from nonprofit charters to for-profit charter management companies. We can look to my birth state of Michigan and Betsy DeVos inspired for-profit industry disaster. And we probably saw her 60 Minutes interview, which was also a disaster. More than 80% of charters there are for-profit, which has led to the Great Lakes state dropping to one of the lowest performing states in the nation. California has more charter schools than any other state. So in conclusion, without increased funding from the LCFF during the past several years, the unspoken situation that most districts would likely be facing is $1 million shortfalls due to charter schools. These $1 million shortfalls are already being realized in Oakland, Eastside Union, and many other districts. In fact, there are now districts that have more charter schools in their boundaries than neighborhood public schools. We're at a tipping point. Our local community should be able to consider finances when they look at charter school petitions. Furthermore, charters like KIPP should not be fiending to circumvent local control because they believe that the California State Board of Education is ready and willing to oblige. In my view, the approach in SB 1362 is aligned with the recommendations in the NAACP's Task Force on High-Quality Education and is a step forward for more fairness, transparency, and accountability for students, families, educators, taxpayers of the state of California.
Great, thank you very much. And thank you, Senator Beall, for hosting this roundtable. I'm going to speak on some of the research that we've done and some of the issues that are addressed that the bill, that SB 1362 would actually address some of the major fundamental flaws in our current system. So one of the problems with our current system of authorization and oversight of charter schools is that it is biased towards approval of charter schools and focused more on the charter industry growth goals than on developing an equitable education system overall for our state. Two fundamental problems that our research has documented is, number one, that our appeals process for authorization is dysfunctional and flawed, and second, that the strict limits on the reasons that authorizers have to reject charters creates this bias towards approval system and doesn't allow school districts to really maintain a comprehensive system that's geared towards educating all children. In our analysis of the State Board of Education's approval of or overturning of local decision-making, titled A Troubling Track Record. We demonstrate that in the process that currently exists, you have districts that will have both staff and their elected boards at the local level deny a charter, then at the county board, staff and elected boards will deny a charter, and then it'll go up to the state. And what's happening right now at the State Board of Education is that around 71% of charters that have been denied at the local and county level are being approved at the State Board of Education level. Of these that are being approved, more than a third of them are not actually functioning. They're either not even opening because the petition was not adequate to start a school. They may be failing, and in some cases the charters are being revoked by the state board itself after having approved it. We recently heard from one of the members of the Advisory Commission on Charter Schools a sense that if you build it, they will come. That's a quote from one of those members. But that's actually not the case. Many schools are failing because they are not able to meet the enrollment goals that they set, which means they're not financially viable as a school. We have numerous examples of these problems and other problems with schools approved by the State Board of Education. Most recently, the Paramount Collegiate Academy in Sacramento, which was closed in the middle of February with a few hours notice to students who were left scrambling to find a new school to attend. One additional problem is that the pace of authorizations that are reaching the State Board of Education appears to be increasing. While between 2002 and 2017, the SBE had heard appeals of 65 charter petitions, today and tomorrow alone they will hear 6 petitions, and they heard 2 last month. That's 8 petitions. So that pace is increasing, and these problems will only become expanded for districts and for the State Board's authorization. So another set of research that we have done and that we're looking to expand upon in April is looking at the fiscal impact of charter schools on local districts. So we put together a one-page sheet that's almost like a teaser of some local research that we're going to be doing, where we look at 3 school districts, including Eastside High School, also San Diego Unified and Oakland Unified, and we look at the impact on the school district finances. These kinds of studies have been done in other places around the country, and what they are demonstrating, all the studies are finding that there is a serious cost to the local district that is impacting local neighborhood schools. The issue is not just enrollment. Oftentimes you'll hear people talk about, well, the money follows the child, and that is true, but not all of the costs follow the child to the charter school. Many of those costs remain with the district. Our upcoming study documents that, but it also looks at other things. So there's the fixed costs that stay with the district even when the student leaves, but there are other costs, special education costs, where it's been documented that many of the needs of the students in charter schools are not as severe as the needs of the students staying in the district, so those students have a higher cost associated with providing them with the adequate services that they need and deserve. There's also the issue of unfunded oversight and a massive loss of staff time. I have heard over and over in talking to local districts and county districts the amount of staff time that's dedicated to reviewing charter petitions, providing oversight, and not to mention the process when a charter needs to be revoked. These are staff that would otherwise be spending their time providing education to children in district. And then finally, in addition to the cost to the local districts, is the cost to the state, which we documented earlier in our spending blind report, where we looked specifically at facilities financing, where over $2.5 billion in direct state funding or taxpayer subsidized bond money was going to charter schools where there wasn't a need or where they may have been using illegal practices. So among the problems, in addition to these costs, is the districts really need the ability to manage their local education system. Right now, under the current system, they can't deny charters based on them not providing a new educational opportunity. They may not be better than what's already being provided by the district, and they may not be different, providing anything different. And so when that cost is being borne by the children in neighborhood schools, that's unacceptable.
Senator Beall, thank you so much. Chris Funk, Superintendent for Eastside Union High School, and on behalf of our school district, I want to let you know that we fully support SB 1362 for a couple main reasons. First and foremost, we have met the threshold of the charter school law. We have 12 charter schools that have been authorized by the school district and by the county. we have 11 comprehensive high schools. Nowhere in the intent of the charter school law was it to have more charter schools than comprehensive high schools in a school district. 2, we have worked extremely hard to be collaborative with our charter schools. We have not had one charter school have to go to the county office on renewal because our process has been fair and transparent. We also have provided long-term leases for every single one of our charters, so we don't have to do the Prop 39 dance every single year. But at this point in time, enough is enough. When the board denied KIPP East San Jose, they denied that because at the same time they passed a resolution because we had a $27 million hole to lay off 140 employees over the next 2 years. By approving a second KIPP, that would reduce another 500 students and leave us with the remaining cost to educate our students, and thus continuing to reduce the support structures that are in place. Counselors, advisors, instructional coaches, to that nature. And so the thing that supports us the most in this bill is to allow our elected officials to make the decision on whether or not a charter school petition should be accepted or denied. It also allows the county office that has elected officials to make that decision. Last month, I was up here in Sacramento addressing the Charter School Advisory Board. And lo and behold, each of these individuals were appointed, and the chair of the Advisory Commission is giving advice to the petitioners on how to improve their petition and what to put in their presentation when they face the State Board of Education. That is unacceptable. The charter school law does not allow for the petition to be denied by the local LEA, by the county LEA, to be completely changed when it comes to the State Board of Education. That violates the state law, and our State Board of Education has violated that time and time again. It'll be interesting to see if they take that stance today. And this bill would eliminate that from ever happening again. So thank you for that support.
Thank you for having me here. And Senator Beall, I want to thank you for bringing forward this bill. I was just asked to come and comment on the speakers that we heard earlier, and I want to thank them both for their tremendous research and the support of this effort. Mostly what I want to focus on in my comment is the flawed appeals process that was brought up earlier. As our superintendent just mentioned, we are looking at declining enrollment. We've been deficit spending in our budget for several years now. And when KIPP came to us at the same time, really literally on the same agenda, as we were looking at cutting some of our support positions for some of our most vulnerable students, positions like counselors and advisors and activities directors, it just seemed incongruous to me that we would remove supports from 20+ thousand students in support of 500 or less. It just made no sense to me. And as I've been pondering this, I realized that this appeals process really strikes at the fundamental core of our democracy. Because if I were to put it to our community, folks, would you rather have these counselors, these advisors, these activities directors, these parent coordinators, or would you rather have a second charter school? I'm pretty sure I know what they would say. But whether I know what they would say or not, it's moot because they don't get to say. There's a board of appointed people several miles away from their community that gets to make that decision for them. And that, to me, that is highly undemocratic and an affront to our system. So again, I just thank you all very much for putting this together and for taking a stand for local control, which is really community control of our own schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Beall, and thank you for representing me. My name is MARISA HANSON. I'm the president of the Eastside Teachers Association, which is 1,200 members who educate and support almost 23,000 students in the Eastside Union High School District. As educators, we are deeply committed to the success of every student, but it has been a challenge to meet their needs when we were asked to do more every day with less. Senate Bill 1362 will help because it will restore local control of our finances. The reality is this: the charter school law is broken. There needs to be more reasons to deny a charter. This bill will help my district from closing schools in the future. When we lose students, we lose funding, eventually we will be closing schools. This is going to help us to prevent us from closing schools. I'm glad that we're holding this educational roundtable today in Sacramento. Your timing could not be better. I'm here today in Sacramento because we do have a petition that is going to the state board, people that have been appointed to this state board, and they are going to likely approve this petition. I'm hoping today that doesn't happen. With this Senate bill, this will change so that districts will have the opportunity to deny a charter based on fiscal impact. Thank you.
I'm Bill Simmons, president of the San Juan Teachers Association, and I want to talk to you today about Paramount Collegiate Academy Charter. The San Juan Unified School District denied the Paramount Collegiate Academy Charter petition on 3 of the 5 grounds that a district may deny a petition. While there were 3 areas of concern, I want to go into depth on the second finding because that finding is the one that caused Paramount to go bankrupt. The San Juan District's review team concluded that the financial path put forth was flawed and was not reasonably comprehensive. Paramount was unable to support their revenue projections. Specifically, their projections appeared overly optimistic. When the San Juan District requested further clarifications, Paramount responses were insufficient to address the concerns. Furthermore, the ADA projections for the first year seemed reasonable. However, in the second year, Paramount projected a 75% enrollment increase. Based on comparisons with other districts within San Juan, this was totally unrealistic. The average charter increase for the second year historically is 18%. And Paramount was planning on locating in an area of our district with declining enrollment. Other financial issues, including using one-time funds as part of ongoing revenue and unclear assumptions about their expenditures, and all attempts to clarify these assumptions were met with unclear or insufficient responses. The result, on February 8, 2018, a Sacramento Bee article began, and I quote, "Paramount Collegiate Academy, whose charter was initially denied by the San Juan Unified School District and by the Sacramento County Office of Education, but eventually approved by the California State Board of Education, closed abruptly Wednesday. The reason for the abrupt closure was bankruptcy caused by low enrollment and issues with a new landlord. The impact on students was devastating. One of those students was a foreign exchange student, and the agency that placed them was scrambling to make sure they were attending school. Normally, midweek, 4 weeks into the second semester, is not the time to place an exchange student into a new school and into all new classes. But because of the very unusual circumstances, the San Juan staff worked diligently and placed that student along with 15 other Paramount students who were transferred into San Juan after the closure. Academically, they entered into classes that did not necessarily align with their Paramount coursework, and they came into classes that were already weeks into the second semester. But the greatest challenge for these students was the social and emotional impact of this sudden change had on these middle and high school students. To be abruptly pulled away from teachers and peers in this manner usually happens as a result of personal family trauma. But the State Board of Education caused this trauma. The students and families paid the consequences of the State Board's flawed action. In San Juan, we believe in local control, and the law should support local control of charter petition.
I very much appreciate the opportunity to speak about this issue because it's currently going on in San Francisco Unified as well. We are currently, I'm up here because there's a KIPP elementary that has been denied at the local level and is currently seeking a charter appeal of their petition at the state level. I'm a black parent, and I'm actively involved in supporting parent advocacy in our schools. I come to that work because I used to be an educator, and I was working in charters in Oakland. I witnessed schools counseling out students that were harder and more expensive to serve. In my English class, I had a boy who had very extreme needs. He had never been in a mixed environment. He had always been in a special day class. He had difficulty communicating with me, let alone his peers. And because of these social issues that he was dealing with, sometimes other students would tease him and it would cause fights and it became a dangerous environment. We had no counselor at the school because we hadn't budgeted for one. We had contracted out to Oakland Unified for special education services, which meant they would come by maybe once or twice a week. Based on my experience as a 20-year educator, he needed more one-on-one support with a variety of services which he was not being provided and which we apparently didn't want to budget for. So what we did instead, because it got to the point where he was actively, there were potential fights in the school, we decided, or the administration decided to send him home in the middle of the day. They worked it out with the parents that if he was, quote, having a bad day, he could go home for the rest of the day. This happened for several weeks, and then at which point they sat him down and explained to him that this was a college-going school, and maybe this wasn't a good fit for him, and maybe they should consider another school that could better meet his needs. In addition, I spoke to, it was a very small school, so I spoke with the recruiter there, and she explained that they were discussing ways to explain to prospective families in future years that they, if they had needs such as this child, they might want to consider other schools. I quit mid-year, and I've never gone back to charter since. I've invested in helping to build parent leadership in my district, and now families that are actively engaged in their schools are being told that KIPP Elementary wants to push its way into low-income, under-enrolled schools, and in so doing, they will push out services that those families have fought very hard to secure. Services like wellness centers, special resource rooms, science rooms, computer labs, and they will have no voice if they are approved by the state. They will have no voice in the fact that KIPP Elementary is pushing into their village. And we are also hearing from Mission Education Center families. These are Latino families. They testified about a month ago at the school district because they heard that their school might also be pushed into by KIPP. And in Spanish, these are families that are currently terrified because of ICE raids and things like that. But they came out to our district and wanted to advocate for their ability to protect their community. So thank you very much for your work on this, and I appreciate and will support SB 1362.
Allison, it's very difficult and tough to be the parent of the child with special needs, and sometimes the children of special needs are forgotten, but they'll never be forgotten by me, as I'm the bulwark for the special ed children in California. They need to have equal education opportunity as much as everybody else, and all the education system officials should realize that it's their right to have that education. Their right, they should have their education. And thank you for being here. We will do our best to improve education for those with special needs. I wanted to thank everybody for being here for this hearing. This is a little informational hearing. We're going to have much more input on this subject. Saturday, March 17th, for information, I invite everybody to the Education Roundtable that we're having in San Jose. It's at 9:30 Saturday, March 17th, 9:30 to 11 at the Cypress Community Center, 403 Cypress Avenue, San Jose. We have some flyers out there. You can get a copy of them. The public are invited. We'd like you to RSVP if you're coming. I have another bill I'll mention today in about an hour and a half. 1:30 I'm going to present SB 1019. That's a bill that provides behavioral health services in schools, funded by Prop 63, the Mental Health Services Act. We're trying to get some of our Mental Health Services Act dollars so that the education system and the healthcare systems can work together to provide those behavioral health services kids need in schools. And as you know, I'm the chairman of the Senate Committee, Special Committee on Mental Health and Substance Abuse, so I'll be working on many, of course, mental health and substance abuse issues. So we want to have those services for kids. I also like to point out another bill that we're working on, SB 912. This is a $2 billion housing bill. The people at Eastside High School District, the superintendent, the board members have explained to me the very fact that many of our students in these schools are homeless children. And we have to recognize this. And this is a social problem that we have in California. The children are, when you say homeless, they're out in the streets or they're without a permanent home. They're couch surfing, they call it. And the children should have a stable home so they can get a stable education. And I think our education would be approved for those children if they had a stable home. And that's why we have SB 912 to take a little bit of that one-time government surplus to be spent on housing. When we have a surplus, as you know, it's either ongoing money or one-time money just for that year. When you have one-time money, you can spend it on things like fixing things or funding things like housing. If you have ongoing money, you hopefully will spend it on education as the top priority of the budget, ongoing. Sometimes that doesn't work that way. I'll just say this, our budget includes increasing the prison budget by $1 billion, and over 500 employees will be added in the prison system. So we're kind of going the wrong way. That's the proposed budget. We hope to turn that around so there's more money in education than we spend in prisons. And we have to start at the earliest age to end the prison pipeline that we have. So as you can tell, I think that all these social, healthcare, education things are all intertwined and interrelated. They're not isolated structures. We have to deal with these social, healthcare, criminal justice, and education system in a complete strategy. And the strategy would be to get people healthy, get people out of prison, too much incarceration, educate juveniles, corrections departments should be for rehabilitation, not for punishment, and we should have free college education available to everybody. So thank you very much. Appreciate everybody being here.
A quick picture with everyone.
And I'll say one more thing. I just got one little other tidbit. For many years, boards of education have operated in a sense where you elect your board member, and the state of California is changing. We're becoming a very diverse state, and it seems to me that now's the time more than ever, with the haves and have-nots existing in our society, that we should empower neighborhoods and make the neighborhoods have more control over their lives. And it's very interesting to me that when our neighborhoods are turning different colors than me, that people are trying to disempower them by taking away the right of their elected school board members and community to make decisions about their communities. So I think empowering the neighborhoods and the people in the neighborhoods to make their decisions and elect their leaders and having power, this whole taking away power, it's an old story. It's an old American story, right? It goes back to slavery. It's an old story, and we cannot let it continue. We have to stop it, and we have to encourage empowerment in our communities. Thank you.